I don't know, but I could probably try to figure it out from the plans that I've got, if that would be helpful. I can't do it tonight, but I could get that back to you. This is, so I can figure it out from this. This is the site plan for the Lancaster County one. That's the facility. There's one of the ways that they've planned growth, which actually means some stubs off of the corridor. Personally, I don't think that's the most ideal way to do it, because now instead of having one long corridor that you can supervise, you've got the stub corridors. So if you go with this kind of linear arrangement, I think it's actually better to figure out a way that you can expand it out the end. But it looks like they ran out of site here, so they couldn't do that, so they came up with something else. But, you know, they've got a lot of buffer space. They've got some of the support facilities that are in separate buildings. That can be a good strategy if you're doing something like this, because you can build perhaps cheap tilt-up industrial type buildings that are much cheaper to build than a jail, and you can have your warehousing and maybe your laundry and other kinds of functions there. You could have a medium or a minimum secure facility on the site that wasn't physically connected but provided some of the services. This is an example somewhat related to the other ones, where they took an existing kind of linear arrangement, and this did grow out the end, so that when they built the expansion here, they were able to extend the corridor. I'm sorry to see the way they jogged it, but they had this kind of housing unit design where they had the cells all the way around and some exercise space. And you'll see from the next picture that they decided to make the housing units very different this time, and they have two different kinds. They've got cells along here. In this one, they've got sort of medium-sized, smaller dormitories that share the day room space on this side. And I'm going to show you a picture of what that looks like now. So that's the dormitory. Let me just toggle back here. That's the dormitory that you saw over here. And here you get a huge wall of glass looking out into, I think it was a courtyard, but I'm not sure. And you get a couple of tiers of these sort of dormitory type spaces, but it could also be cells. So they've got glass fronts, and they're getting natural light borrowed from the big windows and skylights in the day room, which can be an interesting way, and I'll show you a couple of other examples of that. We do try to get natural light into cells, and sometimes that results in a tiny little slit window that doesn't give you much light, but depending on where you put it, it might give the inmate the ability to view out, or it might not. Of course, if you give the inmate the ability to look out, you may be giving other people the ability to look in, so you have to be very careful of how you do that. I'll show you some slides from San Joaquin County, and I've picked these. I picked this one just because I thought you might be interested to see one of the functions, which is a secure sally port. It's got some big gates over here. You can drive buses. You happen to be looking at a car, but you can drive buses and vans in here. You can park a lot of them. Certainly in this climate, you'd have an overhang here, so you could load and unload your inmates under cover. You only have partial cover here. But again, you see you've got an enclosed space here, a secure space, so you can get a big window looking into it. And I didn't know what kind of booking arrangements you had here. I was pleasantly, I learned to my pleasure that you have what we call an open booking arrangement. Actually, your desks don't look that much different than these desks, where the officers who are booking the new arrestee are interacting with them across a counter, something like this one. Sets up a whole different kind of expectation compared to talking through a glass window. And so there's a personal one-to-one relationship, and probably from most cases a much better experience for everybody. In this case, if you come in and you need to wait, this isn't quite the right picture of it, but if you need to wait, there's a seating area with chairs. You'll only be put into a cell if you are acting in a way that suggests you need a greater level of control. This is one of the housing units at San Joaquin County. Remember I was talking about this idea of direct supervision and the officer stationed inside the housing unit at a desk, not inside a glass bubble. So at other times of the day, the inmates would be milling around in here or watching television or doing whatever they're doing. But from this desk, this unit has two wings, but the officer can see everything that's going on in both of these wings. About 64 capacity, and that's good, but it's not probably the optimal that's achievable. This is a smaller subdivision of the space down in one end with the television so that you're not blasting the sound out through the entire unit. Just thought I'd mention for those of you who haven't visited very many jails that we now have a lot of medical, and this happens to be a dental suite. San Joaquin County has a very extensive medical unit, but I just thought that it would be worth kind of reminding you of the functions. Now I'd like to show you some pictures of the Sonoma County Jail. This is their main jail. It's going to show you a few selected pictures, but they also have this booking across the desk idea, and they also have this kind of lounge-like waiting area. I'd like to just take a minute, though, because I'm going to show you another slide. We actually did an experiment here. It was funded research by the National Institute of Corrections, done by me with the help of a bunch of neuroscientists, okay? But I mentioned earlier, I kind of asserted that views of nature can be very relaxing and reduce stress in a stressful environment. We've found that, researchers have found that in medical settings and other settings that can be stressful, and we thought, well, you know, if it works in a medical setting, maybe it would work in a jail. And what we ended up doing was, because we couldn't really put a big window or a garden into this existing building, what we could do was buy a big photo mural, and this wasn't an original idea in the sense that this had been shown to work in the medical setting, but we did. We put this mural in. We couldn't get rid of the TV, so you know how many natural scenes you see with a TV in the middle. But we did a before and after study, and again, we couldn't measure the stress on the inmates because we couldn't hook them up to monitors, but we could do the staff, and we had the same booking staff before and after, and I won't go into the details of it, but you know, neuroscientists at Ohio State University, you know, did the analysis, and we found a measurable and significant reduction in the stress on staff from the fact that these murals were there. And we don't actually know if it was their own exposure to the view of nature or the inmates who then acted better maybe, but we don't know. But we do know that it worked. It did work. We just don't know quite exactly how. But I thought you'd be interested in that. Back to the other parts of Sonoma County, it's a housing unit plan that's not too different from San Joaquin County. Sort of similar two-wing unit, 2 stories. I'm pretty much standing in the staff station here, but it's an open staff station. Now I am standing in the staff station, and I'm looking at the kind of touchscreen electronic controls that you're beginning to have some of in your jail. Your graphics aren't quite the full-color version yet, I guess, but these are pretty much state-of-the-art. You can have them inside the housing unit because they don't really control the way out of the housing unit. They only control the doors to the cells. The exits and entrances are operated from central control. And you get a sense of the way that you can use recreation yards to bring in natural light. I thought I'd show you, it's a different jail, but I thought I'd show you a better picture of a kind of recreation yard. It happens to be in Arizona. But it's pretty nice if these can have some openness to the sky, at least partly. Here I know you'd want them partly covered as well, but get some light, maybe get some sun into them. and some opportunities for some recreation. Obviously not an occupied cell, but very typical now, with some exceptions, to have 2 beds in each cell as long as the inmates are compatible. You get a desk, and behind that little partition here, you get a toilet. And then, even though the majority of the housing is that of the type that I just showed you, each of these jails has at least 1 unit and maybe more that are of a higher security level. There is a day room, but the inmates are usually only out one at a time. The doors are much higher security locks, food passes, and things that go along with higher security. Okay, I debated whether to put this one in the wild experiment category or the horizontal category, but I ended up horizontal. Contra Costa County was the first local county jail to implement direct supervision. So they were kind of leaders and at the forefront, and then as they needed to expand and build another facility, they were ready to push the envelope even further. And I'm not going to show you some of the details where this didn't really work out that well, but they pushed some of them too far. But the one thing that's so striking about this, it's the public areas, which are reasonably nice. It is a kind of a campus plan, almost like you would expect a prison to be. I'm not suggesting you'd want to do that here. I just thought you would get a kick out of looking at what they did with the landscaping. They have a horticultural program. I know you have one too. But here, the horticultural program has like completely taken over the jail yard. And I mean, it really is a jail. See, walk single file, hands behind your back, no yelling. But they have had absolutely no problems. Most of the plantings are low enough so you couldn't really hide behind them or break sticks off to use for weapons or whatever. And they're careful enough about it. But the thing is, it has provided an immense stress reliever for everybody in this facility. Now, this also has a housing unit that's somewhat on the similar design of what we've looked at, kind of 2 wings with a staff station in the middle. But what they've done, this is the staff station, and I know it's a little flared out here. So this is the staff station in the middle of the facility, of the housing unit. So it's looking that way at one wing and that way at another. But you see this partition here in the middle that's open, and it's been slid across. There's another staff desk just like this right over here. So at night, or if you have a low, kind of a lower security level, this entire double unit is supervised by 1 staff. So this was a clever configuration that maximized the staffing efficiency, and that's the kind of thing we're looking for. Sheriff?
What is your perspective on the cost of staffing or the amount of staff ratio to inmates you need in a direct versus an indirect facility? Is it significantly higher?
It should not be significantly higher to do direct supervision. I don't believe it should be, if you do it efficiently. Yes?
The point of the garden, was that the inmates actually maintained that, or was that part of the landscaping that the county would actually pay for?
It's a horticultural program that trains the inmates to do the planting and the maintenance, and I believe it's self-sustaining. I don't think it's a cost to the taxpayers.
Cool, thank you.
Yeah. And I didn't show you, but they built gazebos and fountains and things that they learned to do also on the outside, and then that they could do on the outside. Again, access to recreation directly from the unit and the use of the window to the recreation area to get in natural light. Now here, the inmates walk around the campus and they go out. If they're supposed to get medications, they go out to pick them up at the medication window. They just walk up to it. They walk to the classroom where their class is. So it's not the bringing the services to the inmates. It's taking the inmates to the services, but the inmates at this facility are allowed to walk around, so it's not costing more in this case to do it. It may not be something you want to do. Again, I'm just showing you different approaches. And again, they have a higher security unit as well that isn't on the direct supervision model.